Lindsay Dahl is Chief Impact Officer at Ritual with a career spanning Capitol Hill, toxic chemical policy, and consumer wellness. She's one of the clearest thinkers on both politics and the culture of sustainability across the US today. Joining her in conversation is our own Julia Collins, the founder of PlanetHAUS. This is the kind of honest, uncomfortable, and necessary conversation that PlanetHAUS was exactly designed for. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you, guys. Hello, hello. All right. Oh, these are comfy chairs. I
Very
love it
cozy.
up here. So, this topic feels super, super, super relevant right now, being in Planet House, being together. You know, who is really welcome in the environmental movement? Are all people welcome? So, like, by a show of hands, how many people here would consider themselves part of the climate movement? Just raise your hands. So many of us. But if you think about your network, your family, you might not see as many hands. And in fact, it is true that not everyone really feels welcome in this movement. It is the reason why I created Planet House, because so many times when I turned up at an environmental event, it felt so formal. It felt so cold. It felt so gendered. It felt like I was the only Black girl in the room, because I was. And so I want to talk to you about this, Lindsay. Are all people really welcome in this movement?
Yes, is a short answer. And I think the question kind of gets to how twisted social media has made our minds and this topic. So if you think about Earth Day, 1970, it was the biggest outpouring and grassroots mobilization at the time, and it was very bipartisan. And if you look at polling consistently across party lines since the 1970s until present day, caring about the environment from the voters, from individuals, has always been bipartisan. And I've spent 20 years working at the intersection of toxic chemicals and consumer products, which now is shockingly making lots of headlines. But again, this has always been a bipartisan movement. And I think we have a lot of work to kind of unwind the last 5 years and the kind of polarization that we're seeing now.
So let's talk about the now of it. You know, we come to this movement for many reasons. Some of us come because of climate, some of us come because of health, some of us become because we love the outdoors and we have children. What we're noticing in the data is that more than ever, folks are concerned about health. Folks are concerned about the environment. Why do you think that's happening now? What is it about the moment that we're living in that's causing increased interest in this movement?
I think there's a couple things. The first of which is we've had the science continues to get stronger. That shows us that toxic chemicals in our products in our homes are problematic. Not all of them are, of course, but the science continues to grow. So I'm not talking about random studies and like low impact journals. I'm talking about scientific consensus across things like forever chemicals, PFAS. And so as the science has matured, so has the reporting on it. And I remember, again, if you think 15, 20 years ago, it was like if there was one story about bisphenol A in baby bottles, like everyone in the environmental health community knew about it. And now it's like, I don't even know, and there's no way I can track how much press is being reported on it. So I think the intersection of the science and communications and reporting on it has then driven consumer behavior and started that conversation. I also think the kind of like consumer wellness influencer culture on social media has also exacerbated it in ways that are good and bad.
Tell me a little bit more about that sort of consumer wellness ethos on social media. It seems like also with apps like Yuka, a lot of folks are coming into the environmental movement, particularly around food, through health first. Do you see that being true in the places that you're sort of like building and navigating? Do you see health being something that's drawing people in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a strong emotional connection. We're hardwired to think about protecting our health and to protect the health of our families. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad pathway. I'm not here to gatekeep how anyone comes into the environmental movement. What I push people to do, both in my book and my work, is that it's okay if that's how you come in. But I want people to start to, once you really get into this topic, to not just have this be about individual wellness, but also the wellness of the planet. And so part of the role that I see my work and others is to help make people bring that bridge for people. So it's like, cool, you like changed your foods or you're like thinking more about shopping and supporting your local farmers. Okay, now let's think about how pesticides or cotton that's treated in parts of the world that you don't know where your supply chain comes from. Let's also think about them. And I think that we're kind of at this moment in time where consumer and individual health is a very deeply entrenched American mindset. And what I want people to do is to kind of open the aperture and think about the bigger systems because it's not just about individual consumer choices. And where I want us to spend our energy is changing the bigger systems, both within corporations and our public policy, that really make bigger shifts than any individual consumer choice can.
So I'm with you. And at the same time, it feels like our movement is still not growing fast enough. And I wonder if there is a case for a little bit of individualism and self interest, if that's what's going to get people to the table and continue to adopt. Do you think in this sort of framework where we move from thinking about ourselves to thinking about the broader context, is there still a case for a little bit of selfishness or self interest?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's totally okay if that is what like the inherent motivator is for someone. And I actually think our movement is growing fast. I think we're wasting time fighting with each other and like nitpicking everyone's individual choices rather than nitpicking and fighting and holding Congress and our state legislatures accountable. So I almost feel like it's a misplaced time and energy. I think there's enough of us, and again, polling shows us this is not just me speculating here. There are enough people, specifically in the United States, that give a shit about this. It's about how are we motivating ourselves and focusing on the real enemy. Like right now, I wrote a book about toxic chemical pollution. I spend most of my time talking about how toxic social media is. Like we have to stop engaging with platforms and getting down these rabbit holes versus picking up the phone and calling Congress. And I know it doesn't sound as sexy or cool or whatever, but I think the time we have is finite and we're not necessarily using it in the way we should.
So, talking about cleaning house, yeah, and that deserves a clap. Or a stat. Um, Lindsay's incredible book, Cleaning House. You'll be signing more copies today outside.
Yes, if there's any left.
Yes, I know. This has been a hot seller. And if you don't have a chance to get it today, find it at your local bookseller. But one of the things I love about this book is just how approachable it is and how I don't feel like I have to be perfect in order to do more to remove toxic chemicals from my life. Talk about sort of how you were able to strike that balance between providing clear guidelines, like around what folks really need to be doing, but at the same time, not to make the reader feel shamed or like they are never going to get it perfect enough.
Yeah, that was really intentional. I've been talking about the same issue for 2 decades. And I think being a lobbyist is what helped me really realize that people remember stories, they don't remember facts. And so you can learn the facts in that moment and be like, oh, that's really compelling to me. But like reciting them or regurgitating them, virtually impossible. But when I'm lobbying, I can tell someone a story that's backed by science and I send them the fact sheet with peer reviewed literature, all that kind of stuff. And they'll remember the story. And same when I'm testifying or doing grassroots organizing and I'm meeting with, local PTA or in a church basement, like stories are what really connect with people. And so, what would have been easier for me is to crank out a book that was like an investigative journal style piece about this topic I know very well. But it took longer to write because I wanted to tell it through story. My publisher pushed it to tell it through my story, which I was hesitant to do. But I think it ended up being an okay through line. And people are like, oh, I don't want to read that book about, I don't want to clean my house. And I'm like, it's a metaphor. And they're like, oh, well, I don't want to feel depressed. I'm like, it's not depressing. And they're like, well, I haven't picked up your book because I was worried it was kind of boring. Or like my mom said, it was actually kind of interesting. I was like, thanks, mom. It's like the biggest compliment a Midwestern mom could give her child. But yeah, I wanted it to be something that felt like it was engrossing. So this will date me, but if you liked West Wing, the movie Aaron Brockovich, and Thank You for Smoking, that's kind of what I tried to go for. Is the spirit of all those things combined together, featuring a lot of incredible, mostly women.
Yeah. I mean, since we have you and you're absolutely the definitive expert on what we need to have in our houses and what we don't to live a toxic free lifestyle, what's like the top tip Like, what's something this room could go home and do immediately in our homes that would have the biggest impact? Is it about the black spatula? Is it not about the black spatula? Like, tell us, Lindsay, what do we do?
I'm gonna give you a really unsatisfying answer. Okay, I'll give you a couple answers that will hopefully hit a couple boxes. Of course, I'm going to tell you to call your members of Congress because right now, our primary law, TSCA, the Toxic Substances Control Act, there's a huge proposal to unwind massive updates we made to it back in 2016. So call Congress, tell them we need a bipartisan, very loud movement to say no more rollbacks on the existing laws we have. So please do that. I have call scripts in the back of my book too. Second is to stop buying as much stuff. So buy half of what you consume. Seems hard, it actually isn't. If you think about how you used to spend money 10 years ago, you'd be like, oh, once a quarter, I'm going to maybe save up a little money and I'll buy a new outfit and I'll try it on instead of all this online business, myself included. And then the third, more specific thing that you're probably looking for is I would say if you haven't yet, switch out your cookware into stainless steel. There's a lot of fancy brands with different coatings and stuff. We can talk about those, but like stainless steel and cast iron is the best way to go to avoid PFAS, forever chemicals that forever stay in our bodies.
Hot tips. Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah. Thank you.